And I'm feeling pretty complicated, but for the most part, I'm excited. I'm happy about the verdict. I think it's what was deserved. Guilty on all 3 counts. You really can't ask for a whole lot more than that. I think the prosecution did an incredible job, and we got the just outcome that we could get and deserved out of this case. At the same time, I also know we've been here before. I've been talking to a lot of folks about the case of Laquan McDonald and the trial of Jason Van Dyke, and how in a lot of ways you have a similar case in some ways, right? You've got police lying about what happened to Laquan. You've got the video coming out and telling us all what actually happened, the truth about what happened. You've got charges being brought, and Jason Van Dyke, he was accused of second degree and 16 counts of aggravated assault, right? That was in 2018. George Floyd was still killed in this heinous manner in 2020. I don't want to be here 2 years from now talking about another name, another person. So we know that these cases, well, we deserve justice in these individual cases, and today we got it, and we should celebrate that. We also know that they don't inherently change anything, and if we really want to change the system, we're going to have to keep turning the dial. I'm happy to see all the incredible work. I pursue the work at the level that I can, but these are the people who you see out here. They do the work. They're the reason that the work is happening. They're the reason that somebody like me could even get elected. And so I'm happy to be out here with the community as they process this information as well.
Quickly, during the closing arguments, it was brought up numerous times from the state side that the community didn't react to Chauvin killing George Floyd because they respected the badge. And that's why the community didn't do anything. Now we know that this case is all revolving around police killing. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about what that did that strike you as anything? Did you think about that? What are you thinking about that now as I ask that question?
I've never been an attorney, but I feel like I know a little bit enough. I know enough about it that you're trying to make the best case that you can to the jury that's in the room. We don't get to decide the outcome of a case out here, right? And neither do the attorneys. The jury decides that outcome, and so they've got to build their story, they've got to build their case, and they've got to deliver it directly to the jury. They've got to deal with the legal consequences, but out here we've got to deal with the social consequences, and we've got to have solutions to that. And the courts can't be the whole of that. So I'll say, I'm not going to say that nobody respects the badge, right? People do respect the badge, but I also think that it's a real dynamic that people fear the badge. They don't want to be killed themselves. They don't want to be shot themselves. And if somebody would have tackled Derek Chauvin on that night to get him off of George Floyd, that might have been the name that we were saying today. And so, I think that can't be lost on us. And that's the dynamic that we have to change. People should feel like when they are going to call 911, that if they need that help, they should be rest assured that they're getting help, whether that's police. And I think very soon that police aren't going to be the only ones who respond to a crisis in our city. If me and some of my colleagues get to have our way. At the same time, if people are calling for help, they don't deserve to have to hesitate or fear that help might make things worse. And that's the system that we have now.
Can you talk about that a little bit more, where you said you and your colleagues are trying to make these changes?
Yes.
Some of the changes that possibly could come, can you mention them?
Yeah. So, in this past budget cycle, we took 5% of the police's budget. We put it towards mental health response. We put it towards the Office of Violence Prevention. And we put it towards channeling resources towards non-emergency responses, fender benders and that kind of thing that police typically show up to, but aren't an emergency. We don't need to have men with guns responding to those kinds of things. I think that's just a small start, $8 million to invest in things that have never existed at the city. At the same time, we've got some real roadblocks with our own city charter. And so you've got community members and council members trying to get some changes in the city's charter that would allow for the council to have some legal authority over policing policy, which we currently don't have. And that's going to end up being on the ballot in November. And so if we're able to change that, I think that's going to give us a good pathway to right-size, law enforcement to the degree that it needs to actually exist, but also ask ourselves, in what ways do our neighbors expect to be kept safe, and create a public safety system that keeps them safe in that way. That's mental health responses. That's the appropriate response to the appropriate crises and emergencies, and that's what we're looking to create.
Thank you. As a Northside resident, What is your feeling about Operation Safety Net and the military sort of occupying the city at this moment?
I think for some people, for most of us, the greatest tragedy that happened last summer was the murder of George Floyd. I think for other folks in leadership, I think the greatest tragedy that happened was that the 3rd Precinct burned down. And, while none of us want to see public buildings being burned to the ground, it is not the worst thing that happened. One of the worst things that happened was the police response to protests, which I believe inflamed protesters, inflamed activists, and really created a chaotic situation that was primed to turn out the way that it turned out. You got folks in the governor's office, you got folks in the mayor's office, and they think that the community is the problem. They think that the people out here are the problem. They think that it's just a bunch of rabid activists who had no impulse control. But, for those of us who are actually out there on the ground, we know what was happening. We saw the excessive tear gassing, we saw the rubber bullets, we saw the flashbang grenades, and we saw people getting injured, and we saw those methods have no effect on keeping us and our neighbors safe. And so I think it's a huge mistake dumping all those resources into that response. And I think it's a huge waste of money. I won't lament on it too much, but I think some folks at the state level and some folks in Congress are recognizing that we often say we don't have enough money for this social program, for rental assistance, or to help people secure their housing, but we can come up with $9 million, $31 million, $35 million. We can just come up with these millions and millions of dollars to invite the National Guard here. It's not right, and I'm hoping that in the long term we're going to hold the system accountable for spending this money in this way.
Thank you. One last question, if you got a second.
Yep.
And thank you for this. You talk about the money and the money being dished out. Well, $27 million then was also given to George Floyd family from the city, from the taxpayers of the city.
Yeah.
Is there any moves that maybe city council members or other legislators are trying to make to where it won't be the taxpayers that are on the hook for police killings?
Yeah. So there was a huge effort before I got in office to make sure that police were self-insured. That effort wasn't able to go forward. I think at the time there was an argument that state law wouldn't allow it. I think that probably will still be the argument, but it's something that we have to look into. Look, quite frankly, we can't afford the public safety system that we have. We can't afford the human cost, losing people like George Floyd, losing people like Travis Jordan, like Daunte Wright, but we also literally can't afford it in dollars at some point. At the time that Justine Damon settlement came in, everybody thought that's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime settlement, and here we are just 2 years later. And so I think that we really have to invest in changing the way that we keep each other safe, and I definitely think it's worthwhile for us to revisit self-insurance, but I don't think a current effort is underway right this second.
Anything else you'd want to add?
No, I just thank you, man. You're like, I really appreciate the work that you do. You've been on the ground out here, and I just, I feel like it can be difficult to tell the truth when you have all these narratives flying through people's minds, flying into in front of their TVs, and you manage to tell the truth every single time. So I appreciate it.